Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ian's talk. Um, Ian, are you not putting your video on so that we can all see you? Your camera on so we can all see you? Ian's muted. Yeah, do you not want me? Do you not want to unmute yourself? No.
I can do. I don't mind. I wondered whether you wanted to just introduce me and then bring me on. I don't know.
I can do. We have a very special guest tonight. Not many of you know him. Big surprise who it's going to be. Ian, welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
My first question for you tonight is going to make me sound slightly deranged, but let's ask it anyway. Who are you? Who are you? Where are you from? Where do you live?
Okay.
Tell us.
Well, could we have slides up?
You can have your first slide.
I really am like all of my previous guests. I'm even having my PowerPoint slides done for me. So there we are. That's me, apparently. No, that is me. So I've been told all my life. As you all know, I think my name's Ian. And, I was born in 1972, and I was born in the City Hospital in Nottingham. And yeah, that is the photo of me. Apparently, one of the first photos that has ever been taken of me. And I don't know whether I'm laughing, shouting, crying, I don't know, probably asking for something to eat. Start as you mean to go on. I was born in the City Hospital in Nottingham. I was the first child of my parents, and then we moved back to their house in Hucknall, which is a little town on the edge of Nottingham. So if I can have the next slide, please. That is my parents. People always say that people say I look most like my dad, which I guess is right, but I also say that I look like my mum as well. I have my mum's eyes, I have my mum's eye colour as well. My dad was called Tony, Anthony, so he got called Anthony by my mother or by his mother if he'd done something wrong, of course, but most of the time he was just Tony. Yeah, my dad was just a really laid back kind of a chap. He was just, I never really met anybody who didn't like him. And he was just one of these people who would give his last penny to someone who needed it. He'd do anything for anyone. And he was one of the most tolerant and least judgmental people that I've met. And I like to think that if you pick up characteristics from your parents, that's the thing that I really would like to think that I'd picked up from my dad. He was one of these people who knew everyone. You couldn't kind of go for a walk with him because you'd never get there because he'd be stopping to talk to people all the time, and you'd sort of and everybody would know him. I never really realised and so much until my dad passed away, and we went into the church for his funeral, and it was absolutely packed of people I didn't even really know, and it just was real like a tribute to how much of a nice and well-loved person he was. So that was my dad. What he did for a job, well, for the most of the time I can remember, he worked in stock control, so he was in an office-based job. Very early to use computers, he had to go on computing courses in the mid-80s because they introduced a computerized system at the factory where he worked. The factory made equipment for the coal mines, which was the big local industry where we lived, and they made hydraulic equipment for the coal mines. Earlier, he'd worked for Boots, the chemist's company. He was a dispenser. He wasn't a pharmacist, but he worked in the dispensary. and he was used to reading prescriptions. He could always read doctors' handwriting. One of the only people ever who could read doctors' handwriting. And even though he wasn't a pharmacist himself, he knew about medications, and he was always the person you'd call if you wanted to know, I'm already on this medication, can I also take this one? You know, you'd so still one of the things we miss him for, not being able to ask him that. So yeah, my mum was Anne. My mum was originally from Hucknall. My dad inside the city of Nottingham, and my mum grew up in Hucknall, and she met my dad at work. She worked in Boots the chemist, the local branch, as an assistant on the counters and serving the customers. And my dad went on sort of a temporary placement there in the dispensary, to fill in for, and they met while he was working there. And yeah, my mum did that job before I came along. She worked on a market stall, on the local market, on a fruit and veg stall, which meant that even when my mum and dad didn't have much money, we always had lovely fruit and vegetables to eat because she got it for next to nothing from the guy whose store she worked on. And she worked in shops. She worked in a wool and clothing shop for a long time. And so she always did that kind of work. She was very active in the community, very active in her church. She ran the Sunday school and the youth group at the church. That was a big part of her life. And she was always sort of someone who was known as being really kind and welcoming. Everybody was always welcome in the house, our friends and so on. And generally, our childhood was kind of just what you'd say would be, I guess, kind of a normal childhood. So just a couple of little photos. If I could have the next slide, please. And I'm trying to click onto it myself, force of habit. Yeah, so that was a photo of me and my mum when I was a little bit older. That was the last photograph that I ever had taken with my mum. She passed away about a year after that. It was just before I went away on the trip that I'm going to be talking about a bit later on. One of the trips I'm going to be mentioning. That was in my mum's garden. She loved her garden, and she always was spending as much time there as she could. Can I have the next photo, please? And yeah, that's probably my favourite photo of me and my dad. That was on holiday in the Isle of Wight when I was about 17 or so. I just like it. It's just It was just a chilling out. I seem to think we were teasing my dad about something. He has that face that he had when when we'd been teasing him about something. So yeah. So can I have the next slide, please? So 3 years and 4 months after I along came a younger sibling. That was my little sister Emma, of course, and many of you have seen Emma on my tours, and she's very often in the chat and on social media and so on. And that's me and Emma when we were both very much younger. That's somewhere in Sherwood Forest, which is obviously being close to Nottingham. We spent a lot of time out there at the various country parks and playing in the woods and things like that. And so we always had a good relationship. Me and Emma, we did a lot of things together as kids. We had our moments, and we drifted apart a bit. I think when we were both sort of teenagers, but we've always been close and done a lot of stuff together. And we never had one of those relationships where you were fighting, and which is quite glad, which I'm quite glad about, because she'd have won undoubtedly. She'd have been a much dirtier fighter than me, I think Emma would. But let's have the next slide, please. That's me and Emma much more recently. That's Emma as you probably know her today. And of course, Emma, as I'm sure many of you know, is a teacher. She's a primary school teacher, and she's been teaching at the same school for about 25 years now. And I'm very proud of her. She's a brilliant teacher, and whenever you meet kids who teaches, and you see her with the kids in school, or whenever you see someone who comes to speak to her who's someone she taught in the past, you can just tell the fondness that they have for her and the respect they have for her. And I really love that, and I'm really proud of her. So that's it's nice that we've still got this really close relationship. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm not going to go through my entire family one by one, but someone else who was a very, very important part of our lives as kids. That's Nana Brown. That's my mum's mum, so my maternal grandmother. And she lived very close to us, and she was always the person who would, if both of our parents were working, she'd come and pick us up from school. She'd come and stay with us. My mum and dad were going out. We'd go to eat at her house a lot, from school. Have nice dinner at her house. Always good going to Nana's house, because you knew you'd not only get your dinner, you'd get a nice little cake from the local bakery and maybe some money for some chocolate as well. She used to spoil us a little bit. I think that's what grandparents are for. But my Nana was always kind of a really important member of the family. She spent every Christmas with us. She used to come and stay for several days over Christmas and New Year with us, even though she lived locally. And she always pretty much came on our main summer holiday with us as well. And my nana was really just someone I just loved spending time with. When she got a little bit older, she was in a wheelchair, as you can see on this photo. And I used to take her out on the wheelchair on the bus, taking her for walks in Sherwood Forest along these bumpy paths. And she used to be giggling as and laughing as the wheelchair bounced up and down. And we just had such a lovely relationship. And she made fantastic apple crumble as well, I have to say. So my nana was someone who was a really lovely part of our childhood and youth, who I really had so much time for. She was always someone you could go to and talk to about things, and that was just another great relationship. Can I have the next slide, please? Well, there's someone else you might recognise. I know that you all know all about Sally Jane. If you came to last week's talk, she had her own opportunity to tell you all about herself, but obviously she's my wife, so a very important member of my family, and that is taken at our wedding in 2005. We met at work, and we've been together since just into the millennium, the year 2000, and we got married in 2005. So yeah, that's my lovely wife, who does all kinds of wonderful things in my life, including doing these interviews and supporting me in my work. Can I have the next slide, please? And there's someone else you would have seen a photograph of in my talk, in Sally Jane's talk last week. That is our niece Phoebe, and that was taken just a few weeks ago at Ludlow Castle when we took her there. So Phoebe is coming up to 25 now. I can't believe it. She is Sally Jane's brother's stepdaughter. So we first knew her when she was around 7 years old, and we always just hit it off. I loved the first time she ever called me Uncle Ian. I was just so filled with happiness, and I love being an uncle, and I really enjoy spending time with her and going out and doing things like that. And I fantastic thing to do. So being an uncle has been something that I've really enjoyed. So, and I know we have my father-in-law here as well tonight, Ron, and you can. we Ron is going to be the next person who is going to be a guest on our Everybody Has a Story, and so I'm sure you'll hear much more about him then. And he also, of course, piloted our boat on our Stratford boat trips. So, could I have the next slide, please? So, I know that the real reason you've all come here is to see pictures of me when I was much younger than I am today. So here's just a couple more before we move on. But I just think I should tell you a bit more about my childhood. We lived in two or three different houses. We lived in a little terraced house the first 3 and 3/4 years of my life. And that was an old house. It had a cellar, it had a loft. Didn't have an indoor toilet and didn't have a bathroom. We had an outdoor toilet, and if we had wanted a bath, we went and had a bath at my nana's house or in an old tin bath in front of the fire. So, you don't really, at the time, that was just something from your childhood, but that was in the 1970s. That's not that long ago, really, I suppose. But then we moved and we spent my kind of young childhood living in a house that was next door to a church where our family went to, and it had been built as the manse, as the rectory or whatever you want to call it, for the church. So it was a big house, cold and drafty because it didn't have any central heating. But my mum and dad were the caretakers of the church at that time. So they did sort of the maintenance and the cleaning and that kind of thing for the church building, looked after the keys and that kind of thing. And so we lived in the church house. That was they didn't get paid for doing that job, but they got to live in the church house instead of their payment. So that was where we grew up. But when I was about 13, 14, we moved to another house. My parents bought a house on a street called Brookfield Avenue, and that was where the garden was that the picture of me and my mum was in, and that was where I lived from my teenage years, and that was the house I then went back to when I went home after I'd gone away to university. Could I have the next slide, please? I need to learn. It doesn't matter how many times I click my mouse, the next slide's not going to come unless I ask for it. That is the beach at a place called Mablethorpe, which is a seaside resort on the east coast of England. And that's where we went for most of our family holidays when we were kids. This is kind of the quiet end where the sand dunes are, big open expanses of beach. We would more often be at the other end of the town where it's a bit more lively, a bit more things for kids to do, a park with a paddling pool and so on. But we spent some great family holidays there. It's a place that I have really great memories of, and the beach at this end of town, it's also a very special place because it's where the ashes of both of my parents and my nana were all scattered after they'd passed away. My mum sadly passed away when I was 23 years old. She was just 2 weeks after her 50th birthday. She died of ovarian cancer. And my nana passed away 6 months later. And my dad passed away at the age of 64. That was in 2008. And he had a heart attack. So very sudden. It's very different to my mum's situation where you'd had a lot more kind of time to prepare for it, I suppose, when someone has a terminal illness. But yeah, then all three of those had their ashes scattered in that particular special place from our family. Could I have the next slide, please? This has got 2 bits on it, so click the first one. So, school days. That's me, aged around 11, in my school uniform. I had my junior school was called Beardall Street School, and was a lovely small junior school, very friendly. I had some really excellent teachers there. I did quite enjoy my junior school. Secondary school was okay. It was called the Hucknall National School, and that was the uniform, as you can see, a blue uniform, which I liked very much as it's my favourite colour. The school was old as an institution, but the building it was in was very modern. The building was less than 15 years old, I think, when I went there, but it was in sort of a 1970s building, so not very attractive. But while I was a pupil there, the school celebrated its bicentenary. So 200th anniversary of the school as an institution. And Sally Jane definitely went to a posher school than me. This is something we always tease each other around, because she told us last week in her talk that her school had a centenary and had Princess Anne. My school had a bicentenary and we only got the Duke of Gloucester, even though it was twice as many years. So she was definitely in a more posher school than me. Can I have the second photo, please? So that's what 5 years of being a pupil at that school did, and a lot of hair product. It was the 80s. I was about 16 on that picture. That was towards the end of my main schooling there, but I stayed on at school between 16 and 18 to do my A-levels there as well. Can I have the next slide, please? And when I was 18, I left home and I came down to Birmingham. I came down here to the university. That's the main building on the campus of the University of Birmingham, and I've taken you there on a couple of virtual tours as well. And I studied commerce and German, which was a 4-year course, 3 years in Birmingham, the third year out of 4 in Germany, and I got a reasonable grade. I feel like I had a good. I feel like I had a good balance of studying enough to get a decent grade, but still enjoying the time away at university and all the opportunities that presented as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So that was Birmingham, and my third year of my course, that was in Germany. It was in a city called Wuppertal, and that is a very flattering view of Wuppertal. It's not by any means an aesthetically pleasing city. That's the sunset though. The city is kind of in the valley. It was originally a number of small villages along the river Wupper, and they all kind of merged into one over time, and the whole city then got the name Wuppertal, which means the Wupper Valley. So there's set of hills on one side, and that was where the university was, on top of a hill. So this is taken from the roof terrace on the top of our student hall where we lived for our year in Germany, and it's looking down across the city to the hills on the other side. It was not a choice of place. Our university had a direct exchange agreement with the department in the university there, but it was a great place to be, because it wasn't too big a place, which when you're settling into a foreign country, I think is quite good. It's more manageable, very friendly university as well, not a massive university, but really well located. So it's a quick train ride from the city of Dusseldorf, which has got great nightlife, great shopping and so on. It's really close to Cologne and to Dortmund, and you can really get anywhere pretty easily. And I had an absolutely fantastic year studying in Germany, obviously getting to know Germany a lot better and improving my German, which was the main purpose of being there, and that's been the basis for my career. So that's the end of the slides for this section, but I do want to talk about a couple of other things. We can keep that lovely sunset over Wuppertal up if we want. I don't mind, because there's a couple of things. Obviously, I'll be talking about work and travel later, but talking about me and what makes me tick, that's my background, and my work, obviously, but something that I know I've spoken about before and done talks about, that has been really important in the last 12 years nearly, is that I was diagnosed with autism when I was just over 40 years old. And that was a significant thing in my life, obviously, because I'd always had a lot of issues not quite knowing where I fitted in or how to fit in, or feeling like I wasn't quite like everybody else and never really knew why. And that gave me a lot of answers to those things and enabled me to be more accepting of things, and also to start to work out, okay, if that's what the issue is, then we can start working with that and working out how to cope with things in life better. The other thing that I was determined to do when I was diagnosed as autistic was to use the abilities that I've been given to speak up for autistic people wherever I could, to raise awareness of autism, to advocate for better working conditions, for more of a flexible approach and a more understanding approach to autistic people in the workplace. I'm fortunate that I'm able to give presentations to people in education, to people in the emergency services, to people in business, corporate managers, and things like that, about autism flexible workplaces, and things like that. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, is speaking up for those autistic people who are not able to, or are not confident enough to speak up for themselves. And I really feel that that's something that, unfortunately, it looks like, in view of the events of recent days, we're going to need quite a bit of in the coming months and years. And I hope that we can sort of fight against misinformation, and stand up for the people in the autistic community who need their voices to be heard. And it's been, a massive part of who I am. The final thing that I wanted to talk about what makes up who I am, is something that happened in 2020. Something happened to all of us in 2020. We weren't allowed to go out and do anything for a long time. But one of the things that happened to me in 2020 was I reached a bit of a crossroads in my life. And I realised, with a lot of help from someone sitting not a million miles from here, that if I needed to make some changes in my life, specifically that I needed to stop drinking. I was drinking far too much, and had been for some time, and I was on a pathway that could have led to some very, very dangerous and very destructive places if I'd have continued in that way. And so in beginning of July in 2020, I decided that I was going to stop drinking. And yeah, 5 years and a couple of months later, here I am. I'm not had a drink since then. And I feel a different person for it. And I'm really glad that I did it, because I feel it's enabled me to reprioritize a lot of things in my life, and it's been something that's really important to think about what was the most crucial things to me, and to look after those things. And I never went to meetings. I had some support from people I knew who had gone through similar issues in the past, and I'm eternally grateful to them for that. 12-step programs, that kind of thing, was not my sort of thing. I have some fundamental ethical issues with them, but I don't want to get into that, because I want this to be about my journey. And that was all about just thinking about what was important in my life, and getting rid of the thing that was stopping me living it to the fullest. So that is me. can have another question or supplementary questions, whatever you want.
Struggling a bit with my mouse. I haven't got my plug-in mouse. I've just got the trackpad, and it's not very responsive. So that's why some of the photos are a little bit laggy behind. But thank you for sharing all that. I'm sure people have really enjoyed seeing all those photographs of you as a child. And I think it's funny, but the ones of you when you were really, really little look more like you now than the ones of you as a teenager. Don't know if anybody else thought that. Um, but I certainly think, like, you at sort of 6 looks more like you now than you at 16. But yeah, thanks you as well for sharing all those personal details about your life. I'm sure people have been really interested to hear that. So, next question. Tell us about your work and your career.
I better unmute myself. Anybody think I've never done this before? Well, I know this is going to come as a shock to all of you, but I work as a tour guide. But I haven't always worked as a tour guide, and I haven't always worked exclusively as a tour guide, so there is a bit to tell. So I always kind of guiding and tourism was always something I was interested in. I always enjoyed traveling. I always enjoyed going places, and I obviously enjoyed languages and studied German at university, and I spoke French to A level standard as well. So always liked to go on tours when I went places. I was never satisfied just having a read of the information leaflets. I always wanted to have someone telling me about it. And I remember when we went on our one and only foreign holiday in my childhood years. We went to the south of France when I was about 16, and I was fascinated by the people working in the resort, the representatives of the holiday company. And I would kind of I used to go and hang out with them and have a coffee with them and chat to them and that kind of thing. And I was just fascinated with the idea of working in tourism and travel. So that was sort of quite early on. And when I was in my final year at university, kind of, what do I want to do? I don't want to go and work in an office, certainly not straight away. I'd love to work in tourism, but how do you get into it? One of my good friends at university happened to spot an advertisement in a careers magazine looking for language graduates with an interest in travel and culture and history to work as tour managers for a big travel company working all around Europe. And I went for the interview down in London and was fortunate enough to be accepted. So basically, before I'd even had the results from my degree, my final examinations, I was away, which is why my university section here never included any graduation photos, because I graduated in my absence, as I was already away in other countries working. So can I have the slide up, please? So this is me in my first year out of university, and that's taken in the Alps in Austria, close to a place called Kitzbühel, which is best known as a ski resort, but obviously also a summer resort as well. Yeah, I started off doing the tours. They start you on quite sort of small tours when you first join. The kind of tours where you'll go and you'll stay all week in a resort and you'll do trips out to places each day. So from there we went to Munich, we went to Innsbruck, we went to Salzburg, we went down over the Brenner Pass into northern Italy, but based in one spot. But as I went back for subsequent years, you get more experience, and depending on, sometimes if they happen to need someone in a particular part of Europe, I worked a lot in Eastern Europe, sort of Central Europe, and in Germany, in Austria mainly, where my language was based. But it was, I mean, it was a fascinating job. It was a seasonal job. So You would work in the summer season. You were living out of a suitcase. Now, these days, I might talk about doing back-to-back tours if I'm away on a tour and then come back for a couple of days and then go away again. But particularly my second season in that job, literally back-to-back tours. First week of May till the last week of October, 26-week season, 7-day tours. And on the changeover day, we went on the coach to the departures bit of Munich airport, and the people got off and went home. And we drove the coach down straight to the arrivals section of the airport and started picking up the people for the next tour. And then round and round we went. Um, I was doing, I alternated between doing tours of Austria and the a tour that was Prague, Vienna, Budapest, 3 cities in a week. Absolutely fantastic times, but very tiring. And I did that for another couple of years, for that year and another year when I mainly did tours in Germany, but it was still very hectic. And, I'd look at some of the guides who'd been doing it for 15, 20 years, that format of guiding, and I'd think, I don't want to be like them in 10 to 15 years because they had no home life, no roots. And while I love traveling, I'm also someone who likes to have a home to go back to and have roots and family and friends. And so much as I loved the guiding and the travel aspect, I knew that it wasn't something that I felt would be a long-term thing. I could feel that I was drifting away from family and friends and all the things I cared about. So I resolved to come back to the UK and to get a proper job. And so I had a look around for a proper job, and I eventually got a position working for a big translation company. I spent a couple of months in their offices in London doing sort of a training course, and then they gave me a couple of options for which office within the company I could go and work in. They said they've got an opportunity in Frankfurt, which I didn't really want to take because that would have kind of defeated the object. I'd still be living a long way away from people I cared about. And the other option was at their office in Birmingham. Now, Birmingham, I'd spent several years of my life living as a student. I still had friends there. And it was very close to my roots in Nottingham. So I opted for that position, which turned out to be a great decision because that's where I met Sally Jane. And I worked for 2 years as a translation project manager. And then I worked for a short time. They recruited me onto the corporate team, which was a big pay rise, but quite an undefined job role, to be honest. I got to do a fair bit of traveling with that. I went to Singapore. I went on my one and only trip so far to the US on that job. But the corporate team that they'd recruited us onto wasn't really needed in the scale it was. And I'd already started to see the writing on the wall, and they actually made me redundant. But I'd already started thinking about doing something on my own anyway, because even when I'd been a project manager, I was checking translations from German into English and having to do so much of correction that I got to thinking I could do that better myself. And I got sick of signing off invoices for mediocre translations that were of a higher value than my monthly salary. And I thought, I'm working in the wrong part of the industry here. And so being made redundant by that company with a little redundancy package, because I hadn't worked in the corporate team very long, meant that I could buy myself a computer, showing how long ago it was, a fax machine, and a decent internet connection for the time. And I said, I'm going to work as a freelance translator, use my contacts within the industry, especially in the German offices of the company I'd worked for. And it proved to be a fantastic decision because I turned out to be pretty good at it. And translation is something that if you're good at it and you are fast at it, efficient at it, it can be very lucrative, and it gave me a good living for many years. But I never was completely happy just sitting in an office at home. You didn't have that and the social contact or anything like that. So I always was looking to, maybe even if only sort of a part-time thing, to also get back to where my real kind of love was in terms of work. Now, translation is not something that has proved to be a very future-proof job. A few weeks ago, I saw a study that had been published by Microsoft that listed the professions that are at most risk from AI, and translation was the number one on that list. I didn't need to read that Microsoft study because I already knew, because between 2020 and now, in 2020, translation was still my main business. But in those 5 years, my income from translation has dropped 95%. And it's almost entirely because of the rapid acceleration of automated solutions. In such situations, you need to be a bit lucky, and you need to have another string to your bow. And I was very lucky that I had that. Can I have the next slide, please? Because back in 2006, I had done a course to achieve the Blue Badge, which is the UK's highest tour guiding qualification. And ever since then, alongside my translation, I'd been working as a guide as well. So I had the professional qualification in guiding, even though translation was really still, 80 to 90% of my income effectively. So that's me being presented with my Blue Badge certificate and the badge itself by a lady who was that year's chairman of our professional association. And that's in the hall in the beautiful timber framed Lord Leicester Hospital in Warwick that we've seen on some of our virtual tours. Can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, alongside the translation, working for a number of years, doing all different kinds of guiding in the Midlands and various well-known places around the UK. There's one of them there. Nice opportunity to go and have a nice photograph taken on one of my visits to Stonehenge. So from 2020, of course, we're in the pandemic. Translation work is starting to tail off a little bit. Guiding work is obviously zero at that point. And a strange thing happened, that I discovered some people doing virtual tours online. And I thought, well, I don't think I really want to do that. I don't think I'll be any good at it. I don't think I'll be able to combine the skills of filming something smoothly and talking and thinking and walking without doing myself an injury. But I was also really worried that as and when things got back to normal, whatever that ended up being, it could have been several years since I'd done any guiding, and all of the regular knowledge that I had would just be going rusty somewhere in a far recess of my brain. So I thought, you know what, why not give it a go? What's the worst that can happen? And strange to say, I actually proved to be a lot better at it than I thought I was going to be. And I enjoyed it a lot more than I ever thought I was going to as well. So it's been a big journey, and thank you to many of you who have been there for much of it and who have actually helped me and supported me along the way. It's so appreciated. So I've had my virtual work. In-person guiding has started to come back, and the last 2 or 3 years, as many of you will know, I've been doing tours for schools as well. It was an advertisement we saw that people were looking for people with languages. They were really generally looking for former or part-time or semi-retired teachers of languages to go and be guides and tour managers on school trips. We dropped them a line and said, would you be interested in having somebody from the tourism side rather than the education side? We had a chat and I started doing those tours. And again, it was something to almost to fill a bit of a gap, but I really enjoyed it. And I found that it was so challenging, but in a good way, really challenging my abilities. Teenagers ask a lot of questions that you wouldn't expect, keep you on your toes. You can't get away with anything. That you have to really, and when you know that you're delivering something as part of an educational program, it's really puts the onus on you to really study it carefully and to focus back in on giving really good information. So I did it. It went well, and since last summer, the company that I've been doing it for, I've been organising all of their German tours and some of their other tours, First World War battlefield tours as well. So as well as still doing them myself. So I do a lot. I go to Berlin quite a lot. I go to Cologne quite a lot. Got some lovely Munich trips coming up. I've been to Paris, Normandy trips, First World War battlefields in northern France and Belgium. So it's quite varied. I'm looking, and I've got my first ones of the new school year coming up very soon, and currently working hard on finalising all the plans for the upcoming tours. So that's my job. That's my work. And
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Ian. I'm going to blow your trumpet for you a little bit before I ask the next question, because when Ian showed the picture of him receiving his blue badge, what he was too modest to tell you was that he also received a prize for getting the highest exam results in his cohort, which I'm really proud of him for, and I'm sure everybody here is going to be proud of you for that as well, Ian. So I think they need to know that. Um, so, next question. Can you tell us all about a hobby or a pastime that is important to you?
okay, well, I won't have the slides yet, but I've always loved sports, and my dad loved sport, and growing up, I always kind of used to watch sport with my dad. I've never been a big player of sport. I used to when I was at school. I used to play various sports at school, but I was never fantastic at any of them. I used to enjoy them, but watching sports has always been something I've loved. Obviously, football's the biggest sport in the UK, and I have always enjoyed football. I follow Nottingham Forest, although I've never been a regular attender actually in the stadium. There's always a thing that of whether and people you should support your local team, not just jump on the bandwagon of the successful teams. I think I was quite lucky because when I was sort of 7 years old and just starting to take an interest in football, my local English championship, followed by 2 consecutive years as champions of Europe, that helps you to support your local team. It also raises your hopes a little bit too high because you think it's always going to be like that, which it certainly hasn't been. Being a fan of Nottingham Forest, but I love watching football. I love watching it as a neutral. I love watching the big tournaments with England, and in recent years as well, the ladies team, the England Lionesses. I absolutely love watching those games as well. So I love football, and like my dad's favourite sport was cricket, and my dad would watch cricket anywhere, anytime. We'd often go for a day trip somewhere, and he'd see a cricket match being played on the local village green, and my dad would sit on a bench and be watching it, and my mum would be saying, "Tony, come on, let's go," and he'd be saying, "I'm watching the match, the cricket match," and my mum would say, "Who's playing?" He'd say, "I don't know. What's the score? I don't know." But that's the thing about cricket. Cricket has its own rhythms and just something about it that you don't need to know who's playing or what the score is to enjoy watching it. And I love cricket. I love watching it on TV. I like going occasionally and watching it live. And those of you who are from a cricket playing nation will know sort of the pinnacle of cricket is called Test cricket, international cricket at Test level, and the matches played over 5 days. And I would love nothing more than back in the day as a student when I had the time to sit down each of those 5 days and watch the whole day's play. Absolute bliss. But neither of those are the sport that has been the main passion of my life as a sports fan. So let's have the first slide up now, shall we? So when I was about 7 years old, my uncle took me and my dad to a football game, Nottingham Forest game, against a touring American team, Tampa Bay Rowdies, they were called, from the old sort of US League back in the 70s, early 80s. On the way back in the car, he told me and my dad that him and my other uncle had been down to watch the first couple of games of ice hockey at the local stadium. And that the team that had played there back in the 50s and 60s had started up again after 20 years away, of not existing. And he said, why don't you bring you and Ian down and have a look at it, have a look at this game, see what you think. And so it was that the third game of the team's reinvention in 1980, me and my dad went down to the Nottingham Ice Stadium, and that's in the picture here. It's actually a lovely Art Deco building, and the interior of it looks like a big aircraft hangar. That was the old stadium in its later years, set up for hockey, and I loved it. And ever since then, I've loved hockey. I love the speed of the game. I love the skill. I love the physical element of hockey. I mean, I'm not a violent person myself at all. I avoid conflict, but the physical aspects of hockey is another matter altogether. I think it's a sport that combines so much, and I loved it. And the team were no good in those days. The standard was very poor, but they packed out the stadium, from almost day one. And I remember a few games my dad sort of said, well, do you enjoy going? And I said, oh yeah, I love it. And he said, well, they're not winning many games. If you don't want to keep going, you don't have to go. And I said, no, I want to go. It's been a few times I regret those words since then, but never for that long, So this was our old stadium, and it was the home for the first 20 years of being a fan of the Nottingham Panthers. Can I have the next slide, please? That's down in the corridor underneath the seats, and that is home. That was, we would go there. We'd be wandering around, a bunch of kids by the dressing rooms. Emma started going shortly after we started, and it's just always that was always the place where we felt at home in that stadium. Very different to where we watch the hockey today. So if I can have the next slide, please. Because in the year 2000, there was a new arena built in Nottingham with two Olympic-sized pads, the main arena, and then a smaller building next door on the site of the old stadium for public skating and training and various junior games and things like that. But my team now plays in this fantastic stadium. The National Ice Centre now has a sponsor, the Motorpoint Arena. And that is the view from my seat in Block 13. That's where I have my season ticket. And that's the view we have of the ice during those games. So it's always been one of those things that's, because it's a minority sport in this country, I think that's one of the things I like about it. It's not like football where everybody kind of knows about it, and so it's something a little bit different. I do like that, and so it's always been a kind of a little bit of an unusual thing to be into, that people kind of are interested to hear about. Can I have the next slide, please? Hockey has also been all about family and friends for me over the years. It was my two uncles who first took me and my dad My sister started coming. When my uncle met his later wife, she started coming. It's always been a family thing. So still today, my two uncles, who are both still with us, my uncle's wife, my two cousins, who are a lot younger, sort of 15, 20 years younger than me and Emma. So seven of us in our family are all still season ticket holders in that arena. But I've also made fantastic friends through the hockey, and this is a few of them. Great friends that I met. And as you can see, we're all wearing shirts that are not our black and gold Nottingham Panthers shirts. In 2005, we did a charity event called the Rink Rush. And that was over the course of 7 days in a little minibus. The six of us travelled to every ice rink in the UK where senior hockey is played. We were met there by representatives of the clubs. They gave us memorabilia to auction off. We went to some games along the way. One of the other teams in the league had special shirts printed up, wore them in their two games that weekend. We raffled the whole lot off, sponsorship we got, and we raised a lot of money. I think close to £20,000 actually for Cancer Research UK. So it was a big charity event, but it was all about the friends, me and the five friends, the two Marks on the back row, and Adam, Paul, and Jono on the front row, who did that together. And it's something that we just talk about and reminisce about to this day. And it's thanks to the hockey that I've met such great friends who have been around down the years, and I still spend a lot of time with, and at least in a couple of the cases, I still sit with them when I go to the hockey games. So can I have the next slide, please? So a lot of ups and downs over the years. This is definitely one of the ups. The gold Benson and Hedges Cup. That was in 1998. That was a sort of a fans event the week after we won the trophy, and it's one of my favourite players, probably of all time for the Panthers. He was one of our goalies named Trevor Robbins from Brandon, Manitoba, and I was really pleased to have a photo. Now, the same evening, I had a almost identical picture taken, except instead of the player, there was our coach at the time, who was a great coach called Mike Blaisdell, very charismatic guy. But a couple of years later, mid-season, he upped and joined our arch rivals, Sheffield. And I don't have that photo anymore, because like a archetypal jilted lover in that kind of movie, I cut him out of the photo. I still cannot believe to this day that I did that, but I did. I don't have that photo any longer. Have the next slide, please. Now, over the years, my friends tease me because I've missed some key milestones and the iconic moments in the Panthers' history. The Panthers' biggest ever victory was a victory 31-2. I missed it. I was very young. I was at a Cub Scout Halloween party and I missed the game. One of Panthers' other massive wins was a 19-2 win in a Cup semi-final. I missed it because it was the year I was living in Germany. I also was not present the night that my team won its first ever league title, its first league title for 57 years, 1956 to 2013. Admittedly, that game was taking place in Belfast and I was working. I was working in the evening doing a ghost tour, and I hurried back home. I came in the office exactly where I'm sitting now. I put my Panthers shirt on and I got Radio Nottingham on the internet and I listened to the last bit of that game, and then I celebrated our victory. I have a bottle of something sparkling in my hand and I am celebrating our league championship victory, the only one, the first one the only one so far in my lifetime. I missed that one as well. So can we go to the next one? We had a lot of success in the 2010s. That's probably my favourite hockey photo, actually, one of two iconic players for the Panthers, David Clark and Cam Jansen, with the playoff trophy, climbing up the plexi at the arena to celebrate with the fans. Can I have the next one, please? Now, I like this one because there's a little story that goes with this one, and then I'll finish talking about hockey. So 2017, the Panthers became the first ever British team to win a European trophy. It's the Continental Cup, as it was called. As you see, the trophy is not a cup, it's a big shield. And people were speculating, online, all the fans groups. Oh, it looks like something you put your sandwiches on when you have your guests round and things like this. Can I have the next slide, please? And it's a two-parter again. So I decided to post a picture online. I got Sally Jane to take a picture of me with a baking tray from the kitchen, and I posted a picture online of I'm celebrating our Continental Cup win with the trophy. And people, commented, they had a bit of a laugh. But during that week, one of the people who'd thought it was very funny was the official photographer of the club. And at the next home game, they had a thing where you could go down and sort of pay and have your photograph taken with the trophy. He said, come along half an hour early. You don't have to pay. Because you've made me laugh with this silly thing with the baking tray, I'll do your photo for you and just send it to you. So he did that. I'll have the second photo, please. So this is me with the actual Continental Cup trophy, and he did that up in a proper presentation folder. The three photographs: the team with the trophy that he'd taken over in Italy where they won it, me with my baking tray, and me with the real trophy. And it's just a fantastic souvenir of that great triumph for the team. So I've got one more slide on this section. The last couple of years have been an emotional time to be a Panthers fan. This is the banner we have up in our home rink, and the numbers you see there are players whose shirt numbers have been retired. Now that's a great honour. It means that the club is saying that no one will ever wear that number on their back again for our club. Most of them are players who have been particularly heroic players for the club, but in the top right we have number 47, Adam Johnson. Now Adam Johnson, just almost, I guess, to the day, perhaps 2 years ago, was tragically killed playing for Panthers during a game in Sheffield. He was killed by his throat being slashed by a skate blade. And it was an absolutely devastating thing for Adam's family, of course, for his teammates, for his friends, for everybody associated with the club. And it was a very emotional time as the club tried to get to a position where they could carry on playing. But it brought everybody together, and it reminded everybody of some very important things about being a sports fan, and that's that it's not always about the result. It's about being a team. It's about leaving everything of yourself out there when you play. You work for your teammates, you work for the badge, you try and do everything you can, even when it's not going your way. And when you're a fan, it reminds us of all how important the people are that we sit in those seats with and watch the team. And it's brought us all even closer as a community of fans. The emotions went full circle because last season, after that despair and that such a low point with Adam's death, we ended the season on such a high, winning the playoff trophy on the sudden death golden goal. And it was, a golden moment, but we've had all that emotion that we've come through as a team, and it felt like a real release to get that moment of celebration as well. So that's me talking about hockey. I think we have a new slideshow, don't we, for the next bit?
Okay, I will close this one down in a moment then and share the next one when you start talking again. So thank you for sharing that, in some really emotional stories in there. And I remember seeing that Adam Johnson stories in the news and feeling quite emotional at the time, and you've brought that back. So yeah, very, very sobering. So let's talk about something cheerful. Can you tell us about your best travel experience?
Okay. Well, a little bit like Sally Jane did last week, I'm not going to talk about one of the holidays we've had together. I'm not going to talk about our holidays. You know, we've had some fantastic travel together, but I'm going to talk about something I did a long time before I met Sally Jane. But before I talk about my main travel experience, I wanted to share this. This is Cologne, and I took that when I was there with one of my school groups back in the summer. And the reason I wanted to include this is because I was fortunate enough when I was a teenager to be able to go to Germany on school exchanges and to stay in a family. And I had that opportunity to go and experience another culture and learn from it. I was invited by my exchange partner to spend a month of the summer holidays with him and his mum, and just me. I went over to Germany on my own on the coach, the public coach service, when I was 17, and I did that. And that is a large part of what shaped my German language, which I now make my living from, of course, predominantly over all these years. And one of the reasons that I really enjoy doing the school tours so much is because I understand from personal experience how important it is to get those international experiences and the chance to practice your language while you're young. And I take it very seriously, and I'm very passionate about it, to be giving a new generation of kids the opportunity to do that and to discover things about the world. And I think, you know, when you look around the world, you only have to look at the news on a day-to-day basis, and doing whatever we can to promote international understanding, to promote a better respect and fondness for other cultures. There's a bigger need than that, it seems, than any time in our lives. And so it's something I'm definitely really pleased to be able to play a small part in. But what I mainly wanted to talk about, I'll have the next slide, please, was a trip that I made way back in the summer of 1995, just before my last year at university. And as the sign might give away, that's not what I saw as I entered in, but I entered in by flying. I had a 2-month trip in the summer, backpacking trip to Zimbabwe. I chose it very carefully. I'd always been fascinated with Africa from reading all kinds of books when I was young, particularly as I was a teenager. Wilbur Smith, I loved Wilbur Smith's books, and a lot of his books were set in Zimbabwe. Now, at the time, Zimbabwe was a very safe country to visit. It was great for independent travellers, and there was a lot of different things there to see. It wasn't just a place where you could go and see wildlife or scenery or whatever. So that, I picked it. Now, this was in the days before the internet. So I'd made some bookings for national parks accommodation and these kinds of things, but it was looking up the address in a travel guide, writing a letter off, and hoping that when you get there they've received it. So I went over there, and I flew over, landed in Harare, and I spent the first couple of days in Harare in a backpackers hostel, getting to know a few people, having a good time, settling in, and then I sort of took off on some local internal flights. And the first place I stopped was a place called Lake Kariba. And this sign here is one end of the Kariba Dam, which is a huge dam hydroelectric project on the Zambezi at the border between Zimbabwe and Zambia. So we hired bikes, and one day we were there and we went across onto the Zambian side, and this was just as we were coming back. So it was a time in Zimbabwe. So let's have the next slide, please. So I stayed in different places. I stayed in backpackers hostels, but Kariba was the first place I got to use my other place to stay. That was my tent for the trip. And I never liked camping, but when you're a student, when you're backpacking, financially you don't always have a lot of choice, and you're at least never without a place to stay if you're carrying a tent around on your back, I suppose. So I did use that in some places as well. The interesting thing about the camping was that they had a very strange system of pricing for tourism in Zimbabwe at that time. They had kind of three-tier pricing. They had local price, that was really cheap. And then they had kind of a middling price for, that was basically for white South Africans traveling around the region. And then they had like the other price, which was kind of two or three times the basic price. That was for international visitors, regardless of whether they were staying in a five-star hotel or a tent. And that would be on everything. So at the campsites, you'd go and buy firewood. A local person would pay a third of the price for their firewood as a person from the UK or the US or wherever would do. But it was applied inconsistently. So it wasn't necessarily applied in restaurants and bars. So you could stay in a campsite and you could walk into the five-star hotel down the road and eat in their restaurant for next to nothing, and then go back and sleep in your tent again. It was a very strange system. So can I have the next slide, please? So when I was at Kariba, a very momentous thing happened. One of the things I most wanted to see when I went to Africa was elephants, because I've always loved them. And at Kariba, I met up with a family who were staying on the campsite. It was a public holiday weekend, and they'd come up from Harare and got a big sort of encampment, several tents, sort of an extended family. And they kind of took me under their wing, cooked my meals, took me out for drives and things. And we went out for a drive on their truck. And just as we were driving along the road, wasn't specifically in a game park or anything like that. This is what we saw. It was the first wild elephant that I had ever seen in my life. And it's just incredible to see. A very beautiful one as well, a good size with a lovely set of tusks on it. That's why it's not such a good photo. We were just driving along in the truck, and it was my first wild elephant. I'll have the next slide, please. Wasn't the only elephants I saw at Kariba. I went on a lake cruise on one of the days, and we got the elephants bathing. One of the local hotels, we went swimming in the pool there, and they did tell us that from time to time the elephants would come and drink out of the pool, in which case they said you all have to get out of the pool. You can't stay in there while the elephants are coming to drink out of it. But unfortunately, they didn't come the day we were there, but I did see them by the lake. Can I have the next, please? So I headed on to the bush to do some more wildlife viewing, to a place called the Hwange National Park, and that's one of the beautiful sunsets at Hwange. And one of the things that I loved there was the clear skies, the beautiful sunsets, but the skies looked endless. And at night time, with no light pollution, when you were out in the bush, the sky was just a blanket of stars. It was unbelievable. You could just lie by the campfire looking up into the sky, and you just see beautiful stars and constellations. You couldn't even pick out the constellations because there were so many stars. And having lived all of my life in cities, that was something really special. Have the next slide, please. So of course at Hwange we saw plenty more wildlife. I saw lots of giraffes, I saw zebras, we saw hyenas, we saw hippos, I saw jackals, lots of different kinds of antelopes, buffaloes. I saw a cheetah. We didn't manage to see lions, but there was one of the staff who worked in the camp that I was staying at, and he said he'd been working there for 5 years and never seen a cheetah. So I'd seen one just in my few days there. So I didn't feel then so bad anymore about not having seen the lions. Let's have the next slide, please. So from Hwange, I moved on to one of the absolute highlights, and definitely one of the reasons that I chose Zimbabwe for my destination. The Victoria Falls. Musi or Atunya, as the locals call it, which means the smoke that thunders. And it's probably one of the most memorable places that I've ever been to in my life. I would love to go back there someday. Photographs can capture a little bit of it, but you can't capture obviously the noise, the mist, the spray coming onto you as you stand there. And this is without much water. This is in the dry season after 3 years of drought. Can I have the next slide, please? So you can see the falls are not all that full, but it is absolutely spectacular and just incredible. One of the things about it was you can look at it from all different angles and it looks different. And then you go over to the Zambian side of the Victoria Falls Bridge and you can go sort of down towards the bottom of the falls and look up at it and it looks completely different. And I kept finding that I'd turn and walk away and I'd walk a few meters up the path and I'd just think, no, I'm going to go back and I'm going to spend some more time looking. And actually on this side, you can sit on the edge and put with your legs over the edge of the gorge and just sit there and enjoy. Have the next slide, please. And this one's just to prove I was there. That is very close to the statue of, I mean, they say the person who discovered, the first Western European person that we know of to have seen the Victoria Falls, Dr. David Livingstone. He has a statue there, and of course I did greet him in the appropriate way, Dr. Livingstone, I presume. He didn't respond, Mr. Braisby, I presume, but there we go, just to prove that I was there. One of the other things I did while I was at Victoria Falls, in the gorge below the falls, I did an amazing day of whitewater rafting. It is one of the most popular and most challenging whitewater rafting stretches that you can do in the world as a just a paying customer. There are rivers and rapids that people who are professionals and properly trained in it can do, but it's one of the biggest that they can actually take paying guests along. And it was absolutely amazing to do the whitewater rafting down there. But I don't have any photographs from the whitewater rafting, of course, unfortunately. Okay, so next slide, please. Now from Victoria Falls, I took the overnight train, which was a really old-fashioned train with wooden panelling and those kinds of things. And I took it to Bulawayo, and then I had a few nights in a place called the Matopo National Park, which we see here, which is a very different kind of landscape. A lot of these kind of boulders where they look almost like they're balancing on top of one another, and we have it's a beautiful landscape, quite really good for walking around, clambering around on the rocks. Have the next slide, please. The other thing they have in the Matopos National Park is some caves with thousands of years old cave art, which I absolutely loved. The giraffes and the impalas depicted here, really just so fantastic, and it was absolutely incredible to go there. And I never thought I'd see something like that, and to go there and actually be able to just walk over the hills and go up to these caves and go and see this was just unbelievable. Have the next slide, please. One of the places at you can visit at in the Matopos National Park is the tomb of Cecil Rhodes, who was obviously arch colonialist, troublesome aspects to his life, of course, in many ways, after whom Rhodesia, the former name of Zimbabwe and Zambia, was named. And he was buried in a spot in these hills because he had a spot that he particularly liked the view, and he said he felt like he was looking out over the whole world. And the spot where his grave is called Rhodes's View of the World. And the guide that we were with on that day, he told us that everybody should go in this favourite view, and that is their view of the world. It's not Rhodes's view of the world, that's their view of the world. And they should have their photograph taken next to their view of the world. And that was my favourite view. That is the photograph I had taken there. And it's got the photograph itself has got a special significance because when my mum was ill, which was just a year after that, when she was in the hospital having her cancer treatment, she said, "Oh, have you got any recent pictures of you?" And that was the one that came to hand. So that was the picture that was by my mum's bedside when she was having her cancer treatment. in the hospital in Nottingham. Have the next slide, please. From the Matopas to some ancient ruins, the Great Zimbabwe ruins, I think 12th century settlement, royal, thought to have been like a royal settlement with a small town around it. Pretty amazing. And also, I talk a lot about when I do tours in the Cotswolds about dry stone walling, but the Cotswolds have got nothing on Great Zimbabwe when it comes to dry stone walling. That's the best examples I've ever seen, I have to say. Have the next slide, please. It's a very contrasting country. You know, that was very stark. You've got the typical African bush of the where we saw a lot of the wildlife, but in the east of Zimbabwe, you've got sort of mountains and hills that reminded the British settlers there of Scotland. So they actually, it's called the Eastern Highlands, and I spent a few days there. It's right on the border with Mozambique in parts, and there's some beautiful waterfalls there and lakes, lovely forested areas. Absolutely lovely spot where I had some lovely days camping and walking and swimming in these little natural lakes and things. And you really didn't feel like you were in Africa at all at that point. I have the next slide, please, which is the last slide. So I stayed in hostels. I stayed in my tent, and I also stayed there. That was one of the places I stayed. That was the single room. Chief Ian's hut, that is. A great little place to stay for a couple of nights. Actually, at the end of my stay, I stayed the last few days with the family I'd met in Kariba. They invited me to stay at their home in Zimbabwe, which you really saw the lifestyle of the, I guess, colonial type community living there. You know, it was a really sort of nice house, and we went out for dinner. Their son was a jockey, and we went to the races. So you had all of the sort of society of Harare out there at the races, and we were there in the kind of the official enclosure because I was with the parents of one of the jockeys. It was really quite a, you know, they were so friendly and so generous, but everybody was, whatever they had in Zimbabwe. The park rangers in some of the national parks I went to that I got to know, they would share their lunch with me. They'd invite me to up to their places to have a beer with them in the evenings. You know, everybody there was, whatever they had, they would share it with you, whether they had a lot or a little. And that's one of the things that I took away most from that trip, was not only the places I saw, but the people as well, because they were fantastic. Okay, let's have the next. That's the end of that slide. Sorry, that's the end of that section.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. I'm really glad you talked about that actually, because there are some photos in there that I haven't seen before.
Oh,
You've told me about your time in Zimbabwe, but I haven't seen all of those photos, so that was really interesting for me as well.
oh well, plenty more of them in the loft.
Don't know how you're going to follow that, but I know you're going to try. Can you tell us about something cultural that's important to you?
Okay, I'll have the slide up, please. So I think we're living in an age where a rock star can be something cultural. So something cultural that is very, very important to me. That is Mr. Bruce Springsteen celebrated his 76th birthday a couple of days ago. That is as close to Bruce as I've ever personally been. That was at the. That's not got any kind of Zoom. That's just from where we were at the show at Villa Park, just down the road from here. Me and my friend Adam in the summer of 2023. It's amazing to be so close to the stage and to get so close up to Bruce. Now, Bruce definitely classes as culture, not only because he's been around a long time, but he's won songwriting awards, 2 Oscars, multiple Grammys. That's culture in my book. So I first got into Bruce's music when I was about 15. I kind of knew it because it was in the charts and everything like that. But Radio One, which was the main sort of young person's radio station, was I guess still is in the UK, they had the first half of one of his shows from Stockholm live. It was transmitted all around the world live, and me and my friend listened to it, and we were absolutely blown away. And we recorded it onto a tape, of course, as you did off the radio in those days. And the next night after school, we both went to our respective houses and got it straight on, and we listened to it and listened to it and listened to it. And it was the first time that I'd always loved music, and I'd always taken music quite seriously in terms of the lyrics and that kind of thing. Bruce's music was the first time that I really felt like someone was singing to me, singing about me, singing for me. I don't know, all of the above. And that's been the case ever since. It just had a huge impact on me. So I collected all Bruce's back catalogue, his albums, everything I could, bootleg tapes from markets, student markets when I was a kid, when I was there at university. Any snippets of information, books, magazine articles. You get all you can. In the days before the internet, you had to be a little bit persistent sometimes. Unfortunately for me, in the 90s, Bruce went through a bit of a lull in his career. He didn't make many records. He didn't tour that much. And then when he did tour in the late 90s, I wasn't really working in a job where I could afford to go and pay to see his tours. Can I have I'll have the next slide, please, just as we go through. Because I've just got a few pictures of Bruce that I've taken from that very close-up show. I went to my first live Bruce show in 2002, and that was in Paris. I'd been unable to get tickets for the UK shows, but Sally Jane, who at the time was my girlfriend, now not my wife, she bought me a package trip, coach trip to hotel, 2 nights in the hotel, and the concert tickets. She bought me the package as a gift. And that I got to go over and see Bruce. On that trip, I met people who had spare tickets for the London shows that I hadn't been able to get tickets for. I went to those, and then I really started to get into Bruce even more, because his recorded music is one thing, but his live shows are what he's most famous for, what he's iconic for. Even in his 70s, he's been playing 3-hour plus shows. And the band are playing 3 hours solid, and they're all, most of them are the same age as him. So, over the years, I'll have another slide, please. A bit of the band on. Bruce's songs speak to me in a way that many other artists don't. Different songs, obviously some of his songs that really spoke to me when I was a teenager are different to the songs that speak to me now about being, when you get older, you have responsibilities. But the consistent thing is the quality of his songwriting, the quality of the production and performances, and especially when you go and see him live, the quality of the musicians that he has on stage with him in the E Street Band. And now I've never actually met Bruce, but if we can have the next slide, please. It's a two-parter. No, it's not. Previous slide, you saw Jake Clemens playing the saxophone. He is actually the nephew of Bruce's original saxophonist, Clarence Clemens. But I did meet Jake a few years ago when he was playing in the UK, not on a Springsteen tour, on a charity tour. We had a beer with him, had a chat to him, and that was absolutely incredible. My friend was so excited that he couldn't hold the camera steady to take the picture of me. And on a similar occasion the following year, as in the bottom photo, we met a guy called Vinny Lopez. Now, Vinny was in Bruce's original bands back in the late 60s and early 70s. He was the first drummer with the E Street Band, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and he had some stories as well to tell. And absolutely amazing to meet those guys, even though I've never managed to meet yet the man himself. So that is my piece of culture, Bruce Springsteen, the boss. Okay.
And thank you for sharing that as well. Next question is going to be really, really tough for you because you're going to have to forget about your day job and
Okay.
pretend that you're a tour guide. And
Oh,
it's time for You Be the Guide. Do you reckon you're up to it?
well, I kind of thought, what the hell am I going to do in the You Be the Guide section? I'll just sit here. Well, yes, I am the guide. But I thought I'd do a couple of places sort of in our local area. One of them that I have, well, neither of them that I've shown you properly. One of them I might well do a tour at next spring or summer. The other one is a place where I've shown you the outside, but now I can show you the inside on this one. So have the slide, please. And something I always love saying as someone who lives in Birmingham in central England, this is our local vineyard. I know, right? So it's a place called Buzzards Valley. And Buzzards Valley, it's been in the same family, the land and the property, since the early 60s. Originally, they had a dairy farm there. And then after a foot and mouth outbreak, they converted to arable farming, particularly vegetables they were growing on the farm. And then later they developed they developed woodlands for forestry use and then fishing lakes. And then in the early 2000s, they introduced then their vineyards. Can I have next slide, please? So they have a variety of different types of grapes, French and German grapes. And they produce red wine, white wine and rosé wine. It's decent quality. I mean, personally, when I drank the wines, I'm not a big fan of red wine anyway. So I found some of the whites were very nice. The rosé was quite nice as well. But it's just lovely to be able to go to your local vineyard where everything is produced on site. They have 8,000 vines, so it's only a small place, but everything's produced there. They don't transport things. The press and the winery and the shop where it's sold, everything is on the site. So they have a nice coffee shop there. We went for a walk up there with some friends a few weeks ago, and we had a lovely coffee and cake outside there. And there's sort of a local deli where they sell produce from local farms, local beers and cheeses and these kinds of things. Have the next slide, please. It's another view of the vineyards. And they have a nature trail where you can walk all the way around the site, through the woodlands, around some of the lakes. A lovely place for a stroll. And the reason I'm probably going to wait until the late spring or summer to take you there is because along part of the nature trail they have a wildflower area, and that comes into bloom at that time of year. And so we could go there and enjoy the vineyards, the woodlands, and the wildflower meadows as well. But that's Buzzards Valley. And you probably wouldn't have known that we had a local vineyard right here just on the edge of Birmingham. So let's have the next slide, please. So also very close to where we live, this is somewhere where I have shown you on a couple of virtual tours before. This is Sutton Coldfield Town Hall. Originally built as a large hotel next to the railway station back in 1865. They expected a lot of visitors to the town because you've got the railway had come and you had the huge area of Sutton Park, one of Europe's biggest urban parkland areas. But it never really happened, and so the hotel failed as a commercial venture and closed after 30 years. And there used to be a fire station in there as well. It became the town hall for Sutton Coldfield's town council, and it also had the fire station, and they used to hang the hoses on the clock tower to dry them out, apparently. Could I have the next slide, please? So it had all different things in it. The council chamber, at one time a courtroom, and the local coroner's court. Have the next slide, please. It ceased to be a seat of any kind of local governance in the 1970s, when Sutton Coldfield officially became part of the city of Birmingham. It still had, though, administrative officers of the council facilities in the town hall, but in more recent years they have had again a new sort of more local level of local government introduced, and Sutton does have a town council again now, so they've been able to dust off some of these old councillors meeting chairs. In the background, the picture there is of Bishop Vesey. He was a friend of Henry VIII, bishop who got the Sutton Coldfield its royal charter from King Henry VIII, which is why it's the royal town of Sutton Coldfield. Have the next slide, please. Now, the hall is a centrepiece of Sutton Town Hall. As you can see, it's got a lovely stage. It's used for concerts, for theatre, theatrical performances, for dancers, and it has an incredible original sprung wooden dance floor. You don't find them very often of such a good quality as that these days. Very good, particularly for ballroom dancing. Have the next slide, please. Has beautiful ceiling and lighting. It's a great place for all kinds of entertainments, but it can also be used for private functions, including wedding receptions. And if we can have the next slide, please. Brings us a little bit full circle, because in 2005 that's where we held our wedding reception. So we've got the live dance band that we had on stage, and there's Sally Jane and I, just after we'd completed our first dance at our wedding reception in that beautiful hall in Sutton Coldfield Town Hall. And so it's a place that's interesting from local history perspective, beautiful building, and also has some very special personal connections as well. And that brings us to the end of me being the guide. That's the shortest time I've ever been a guide for in my life, that is. It's the end of the slides as well.
Okay, I will stop sharing there. So yeah, special day. That's that last slide, very special day. You didn't tell them that we did a proper dance.
No, we did do a proper dance. Sally Jane told you in her talk last week that she was a Latin and ballroom dance teacher. So we had a lot of friends who were dancers, some of them even competitive dancers, former professionals, teachers, and so on, but also a lot of the kids who Sally Jane taught dancing to. So we set for our wedding reception, we said we would have a proper, we chose the town hall because it had the beautiful dance floor. We had a live dance band. And for our first dance, we did a proper dance. We had professional coaching, a professional choreographed routine. It was the thing I was more nervous than anything else about. I wasn't, apart from the fact that she wouldn't turn up. But once that was out, once she turned up, the thing I was most nervous about was not the service. Definitely wasn't giving a speech, because that's kind of something that I do anyway. And it was the first dance, but we did okay. But it was absolutely fantastic to have a proper first dance instead of just sort of getting up and shuffling around the floor a little bit. We did that later in the evening. So yeah, that's we did mention that, yeah.
So that brings us then to our final question. And if you can take 7 minutes or longer to answer this, you'll have gone on for longer than I did last week. And I'll be very upset if you don't pick something that I've cooked for the answer to this question. If you could have only one meal for the rest of your life, if you were stuck on a desert island and you were limited to one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Well, I already checked with Sally Jane that she wouldn't actually be offended if I didn't reciprocate and pick something that she cooked, because everybody knows that I'm the cook in our house generally. So I'm going to have an honourable mention for cheese. I'm going to have an honourable mention for curry, but I don't think if I had to pick just one thing, I think traditional English roast dinner would take it each time, because I just think it's delicious, and there's nothing to beat it. And that roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, the roast potatoes, beautiful vegetables, and absolutely delicious. And that will be my chosen desert island meal. You might not have cooked it, but if you want to join me to eat it, you're more than welcome. I'll share. I'll give you a roast potato if I've got one left.
Thank you very much. I'm honoured. Well, thank you for sharing so much of your life with us, Ian. I yeah, I enjoyed listening to it. Even though I'm married to you, I really enjoyed listening to you talking tonight. So I hope everybody else did as well. And I will hand over back to you so that you can do the saying goodbye to people.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much to Sally Jane for offering to be the interviewer this week. And so, yeah, it's been a Braesby double header. Anybody who would like to do this, you don't have to speak for as long as Sally Jane and I did. You know, none of our other guests did when they came on. It's fine, but we'd love to get volunteers to do more of these. Everybody has a story events, but we've got a few things coming up, and Claire has very kindly put the links in the chat tonight. So for the Padlet, for Kofi, for Buy Me a Coffee, and we have a couple of tours coming up next week. So on Tuesday at 4 p.m, I will be in Gloucester. Fantastic city, loads of history, beautiful cathedral, and I will be showing you around there. 4 p.m. on Tuesday. That's a live tour. You can book for that at the usual places. And the following day, which is the first, also at 4 p.m, that's going to be the rescheduled tour in Derby, which should have been Tuesday just gone. So if you already booked that, the link you got sent will still be valid, and hope you can still join. If you can't, then I'm happy to give you a refund for that. It's not a problem. Or just you can let me know and I can give you a free slot on a future tour, whatever you prefer. Obviously, I understand if people can't make it. So I hope to see you on those two, and I'm hoping then to hopefully squeeze one more in before I go away and start having my trips in Berlin again. So thank you so much for supporting me, for supporting Sally Jane this last 2 Thursdays, and I hope to see you all very, very soon. Have a lovely weekend coming up, and take care, everybody. Thank you again. Bye for now from me.